You just heard the Kentucky governor, a man right in the middle of implementing this law, saying it can work. Your response?
Well, you know, what we see right now is a stark and fatal flaw. This is a failure at the greatest level and should be a great embarrassment to the president and his administration. And someone needs to take responsibility for it. And that's why we're going to work so hard on the Energy and Commerce Committee to get answers.
But do you believe it can work? If the glitches, and I know they're more than glitches, but if everything's fixed at the federal level, do you think that Obamacare can work as far as the health care exchanges go?
Well, let's just look at it from a grand view. We're talking about Americans going on a website that isn't working right now, and we're on a timeline. You know, this has to come up and working over a period of time between now and about December 15th. It's just flawed. It's completely failed. And now we're asking Americans to buy health care coverage. The premiums are outrageous. I have constituents back home whose health care coverage is going up 400%. They're receiving letters from their insurance companies that are saying that as a result of the Affordable Care Act, their plan that they've been on is no longer available, and their premiums will be increasing.
Congresswoman, why isn't this happening in Kentucky?
Well, you know, I know you just had the clip there of the governor, and God bless him. You know, he's talking about a situation that he supports. But the American people cannot wait for this. There are hard-working taxpayers who are paying for this system.
Was the governor joshing us? Is he not telling the truth? Like, why is it working in Kentucky? Does that prove it can work?
I'm not exactly sure it is working in Kentucky. You know, I have some of my colleagues that serve on the Energy and Commerce Committee, and they're not as thrilled with Obamacare in Kentucky as the governor is.
So the governor, when he says he's signing up 1,000 people a day, and he wants to get those 640,000 people in Kentucky insurance, and they're happy about this, he's just saying that for political purposes?
Well, you know, let's look at the grand scheme of things. It is a failure at monumental levels. And hey, if Kentucky's working, that's a bright spot in all of this. But let's be honest. This is a failure, and we know the Obama administration needs thousands more to sign up for this, and it's just simply not going to happen. And, you know, look, let's put a system in place that really will work. You know, I support the American Health Care Reform Act that I worked on with members of the Republican Study Committee to put forward a plan of affordable health care coverage for Americans. You know, let's not go with a system that's broken right from the start. I know the governor mentioned Medicare and that it was put in place in 1965. You know what? I'm going to be 50 next February. I was born in 1964. If we're talking 50 years later about a system that was put in place and finally has worked out the kinks, is that really where we want to go for America?
Well, I will say, I know that you're in favor of getting rid of Obamacare, but the governor also slammed the ongoing fight by some in your party to get rid of the law. Here's what he had to say about that.
They've weaved this web of misinformation that's been out there for months now. But guess what? Now that these exchanges are open, the people in Kentucky are getting on there and finding out for themselves. And that's what I've told them. I said, look, you don't have to like the president. You don't have to like me, because this is about the president. It's not about me. It's about you. It's about your families. It's about your children. So just go on there and check it out, and you're going to like what you find. And that's what's happening. They are finding that they can get affordable health coverage for the first time in their lives. And I'll guarantee you, about a year from now, they're going to look back at these critics, including a lot of these senators and representatives, and they're going to say, you misled us because, hey, this works. I've got affordable health care.
Well, you know,
so he laid out this scenario. So let's say that the effort to fire Kathleen Sebelius is successful, and she is fired, but Obamacare is still there, and it will be there because you're not going to get rid of it. So will Republicans at some point sit down and say, wow, this is working in Kentucky. Maybe we should really examine what's happening here and fix what's wrong with other health care exchanges across the country?
Well, let's look at another state that actually Obamacare was modeled after, like Tennessee with TennCare, a monumental failure. I think it lasted about 12 years before they were able to erase the whole entire thing, and it put Tennessee in an economic disastrous situation. Is that really what we want for Kentucky? I appreciate the governor's words and the optimism that he has, but the fact of the matter is I'm looking at results. The results are right now that the Obamacare exchange rollout is a complete complete failure.
But you're
a total
discounting
embarrassment
everything
to
this
the
Kentucky
Obama
governor is
administration.
saying. You're discounting it all instead of sitting down with him and saying, Governor, let's talk. Let's figure this out together. Let's figure out what's political in what you're saying. You're just discounting what he has to say outright.
Well, you know, the issue here is I'm looking out for North Carolinians first and foremost, and Americans across the country. Again, I appreciate the governor's remarks. I appreciate the fact that he's in support of this.
But
I
you
respect
don't.
it. But the fact of the matter is we have to look at results. We can't just look at criticisms. You know,
we are just looking at criticisms. You're just looking at criticisms. You're discounting what he has to say.
You're getting awfully angry about this situation. I hate that you're in this position. But the fact of the matter is we have had subcommittee hearing after subcommittee hearing, and each one of those agency heads, including Kathleen Sebelius, told us we were right on track, that these exchanges had been tested, that they were going to go forward October 1st, and every American was going to have the chance to go on that website and see what would be available to them. There are mothers and fathers across this country right now that are still trying to get on that website. And oh, by the way, if you do get on it, at the end,
I'm not disagreeing with any of that. I'm just saying, why don't we find a way to fix it? After we fired someone, why don't we find a way to fix it?
You know, if there's firing in the future, that's up to debate. The problem here is let's put affordable health care forward for all Americans. Let's put something together that really will work, not something that's dead on arrival already.
All right, Congresswoman Renne Ellmers.